this session. I'm sorry I'm a minute late to start the session. Uh, Today, we are going to talk about leading in a world where exponential technologies are kind of all around us, and leading innovation. So before we go any further, the first thing that we need to understand is what do I mean by innovation? I think solving a particular problem that can lead to a commercial impact for your organization is what I define innovation as. So very straightforward, right? So you find a problem, you solve the problem in whatever way. It can be through a product, it can be through a service, it can be through an experience, it can be through whatever business model change, it can be whatever it is that you are doing, which is new for your organization, and you're solving a problem which is leading to a commercial impact. It can be increase in revenue, it can be increase in customer satisfaction, it can be in whatever form or factor, but needs to lead to a commercial impact. That's innovation. So, given that that is innovation, now I want to talk about specifically on how do you lead for innovation. Number one is we need to understand that one of the biggest constraint uh, or one of the biggest challenges when it comes to driving innovation on a regular, consistent basis in any organization is the leader's bias against creativity or against creative ideas. So, as leaders, we need to be aware of this bias. Dr. Jennifer Mueller wrote in her book about the fact that every one of us wants innovation, but as leaders, we are not really open to creative ideas. So that's the bias that almost all leaders have, and we need to be aware of it, and we need to ensure that we don't necessarily allow that bias to stop our teams from finding interesting solutions to interesting problems. Now, given that that is kind of taken care of, the first and foremost responsibility of a leader is to ensure that we are able to provide the uh, frame within which we want innovation to happen. So, which means that we identify the scope within which we want our teams to work. We want to define the problem set that we want to solve in order for our teams to come up with innovative ideas and innovative products and services. So, I strongly believe that uh, the success of any innovation initiative is not dependent on the ideas that you have, but on the problems or the questions that you ask. You ask interesting questions, you ask interesting problems that you want to be solved. Automatically, you will find interesting, the potential for interesting ideas to come up. So, super important that we are able to find interesting problems to solve for our customers and for our potential customers. Now, having said that, right? So, what we also need to do as leaders is to ensure that we are able to create a culture where finding and solving these interesting problems becomes the norm rather than exception. Now, how do we do that? We need to make sure that we expect creativity. We expect people to come up with interesting problems to solve. We need to be open to the idea that a lot of what we try might not necessarily succeed and see the light of the day from a commercialization point of view. So what that means is that we need to be open to run multiple tiny experiments. You create an hypothesis, you find an interesting problem to solve, you create a hypothesis in terms of how the solution could look like. You go and test the hypothesis in terms of tiny experiments. And depending upon the results of those tiny experiments, you can then refine the hypothesis, go back and test the newer hypothesis, and continue this process until you reach a point where you have a commercial application or a service or a product that you can take to market. That's the best case scenario. And in order for you to be able to see that and become the standard operating model in your team, what you need to do is you need to reward such behavior. You need to recognize such behavior. And when I say reward, I don't necessarily mean that you need to give cash rewards, or you need to reward people in terms of by giving them money or promotions or whatever. But even recognition, plain simple recognition that good job. We know that this experiment failed, but here is what we learned. And doing that publicly, and expecting people to kind of do that, and recognizing the effort that goes in designing and running these experiments is what creates a culture where your team knows that they can actually create these experiments and run them without having the fear of failure, or without having the fear of retribution, or without having the fear of being mocked at. So, which also means that you need to be open for a lot of these experiments to fail, and learn from them. One of the most simple things that a lot of leaders fail to do when it comes to uh, um, driving innovation or leading innovation is they fail to learn from their efforts. So, for example, um, in my earliest in my career, right? So, right, this was probably 10 months into my first job. I was selling fabric to a particular customer, and I by mistake I sold the fabric at half the price that I was supposed to sell it at. And the customer, realizing that I'm giving them a wrong price, placed a significantly large order, and even sent me an advance payment so that I don't back out of fulfilling the order. When I told my boss that this is what I have done, without realizing the mistake that I had done, my boss told me that this is a mistake. And it felt really bad, because the amount of loss that my company would have if we fulfilled the order was 3 times or more than 3 times my annual salary at that point in time. So my boss could have easily said that I will not fulfill the order. You go and talk to the customer and cancel the order. But my boss didn't do that. He said, it's okay. I will deliver the order at that price that you have committed to, because you are representing me and I don't want to back out of my commitment. He delivered that. But at the same time, he made sure that I learned the lesson. So he asked me to go and talk to the customer, saying that, recognizing that, I made a mistake, tell him that I made a mistake in terms of the pricing, but I will still fulfill the order at the same price that I committed to, and which kind of created this entire thing inside of me, that it was okay for me to have failed. But at the same time, what my boss at that point in time told me was that you made this mistake. It's okay, but don't ever repeat the same mistake. And that's the thing, right? So when you're trying to do or come up with innovative products, you are bound to fail. You are bound to make mistakes. You are bound to uh, uh, you know um, uh, do failed experiments. What is important is to learn from each one of those failures, is to learn from each one of those mistakes, is to learn from each one of those experiments, and not to do the same mistake again. He also told me something which I will never forget. He said, if you're not making enough mistakes, you're not pushing the boundaries enough. But at the same time, if you're making the same mistakes, you're not being smart about pushing the boundaries. So that's the attitude that you need to take. And that's the culture that you need to create in order for you to consistently deliver innovation as a team. So, it's okay to push boundaries. And when you push boundaries, there are bound to be some successes and some failures. But at the same time, we need to be smart about them, not make the same mistake or learn from those failures and be smarter the next time around. So now coming to the exponential age that we are living in. So right now we are seeing all around us the confluence of multiple technologies, right? So AI is the rage all around the world. So yesterday, ChatGPT 5 was released by OpenAI. The entire month has been all about new models being released, new reasoning models being released, each one of them coming up with much better ability to both reason as well as to code. It's getting easier and easier to run experiments, to try out something in the digital world. So what all of that means is that, the limitations in terms of the constraint has moved from the ability to run digital experiments to the ability to think of experiments to run, which means that the limitation right now is in here, is in our ability to imagine what is possible, is in our ability to imagine the different kinds of experiments that we can run. It is in our imagination, in our ability to imagine new futures for both ourselves and for our customers. It's in our ability to imagine new ways to solve complex problems. It's in our ability to imagine new problems to solve. So it lies here. And what do you do when it comes to when the limitation shifts from out there to in here? This is where you kind of, bring in the perspectives from multiple different stakeholders. This is where you not only bring in the perspectives of your teammates, but also you integrate the AI tools into the workflow. You start talking to them, you start exploring from multiple perspectives. You can ask your AI agent to kind of, think in terms of from different perspectives, and you will get interesting new perspectives. And yeah, and the ability for you to imagine the different kinds of problems that you want to solve then becomes the biggest, constraint from that point of view. One thing doesn't change, which is the fact that we live in a world which is interconnected and which is a complex adaptive system. What do I mean by that? Irrespective of how you come up with an idea, you have to deploy the idea in the real world. And the real world is nothing but a complex adaptive system. So you do something, there is a response to it. And it is an open, complex adaptive system, which means that you need to understand how uh, the system will respond to what we are trying to do, both internally as well as externally. What do I mean by that? So every time you're trying to run an experiment and trying to solve an interesting problem uh, with a specific idea, you need to think of all the system in which the idea will live once you release it. What will be the intended consequences for that particular idea or the product or the service in terms of adoption, in terms of response from competition, in terms of potential um impact on your own business, and how will your business or the customers or the partners or the competitors will respond to that situation. And you start thinking about the problems that you're trying to solve also as part of a complex value chain. of a complex adaptive system and see where exactly are you trying to solve the problem. If you actually think about it, uh, the place where a particular problem manifests itself is probably not the place where you should solve it. You should go upstream, because usually the real problem which causes this symptom to appear at a particular stage or particular part of the system is always somewhere upstream. So let's say, for example, you're trying to create a product that will help customers sell more. So the problem that you're trying to solve is there is you want to improve sales. So why does it? Why are your customers not able to sell enough right now? So maybe they don't have enough products. Maybe their products are not solving enough problems. Maybe there is something else that they're trying to solve for. So the problem where it manifests is not the place where you should be solving the problem. You should be solving the problem upstream of that, from at the place where it is most possible that the root cause lies. Um, I think the other thing that we need to remember as leaders when it comes to leading teams for innovation is the fact that uh, where our resources and our attention goes, that's where the energy of your team goes. So if you are willing to support your team with the right kind of resources, with the right kind of attention, you will find that the team is able to do more of that. Um, so that's probably all I have for today. Um, I hope you are able to integrate technologies like AI into your overall innovation pipeline. You are able to use it to imagine new futures. You can use it to imagine new products. You can use it to imagine new problems to be solved, to identify new problems to be solved. You use it to find interesting solutions. You use it to find new ways of solving old problems. Wishing you all the success in your innovation journey. Let me know if you have any questions or if you want me to go deeper into any of these topics that we spoke about. And I'll see you in the next live stream. Take care. Bye.